Was the Root of Nightmares raid a success? Well, depends on who you are. I think in Bungie's eyes, though, this was a massive success because Bungie really doesn't want to make a raid that no one can beat. But let me just say, the amount of people that cleared Root of Nightmares is substantially larger than any other raid we have ever had. At the same time, overall viewership of this raid on Twitch was larger than any other raid. Matter of fact, Destiny 2 set its record on Twitch with the amount of live viewers that it reached. Now, today we're going to talk about lore. We're also going to talk about the raid itself, what could have been better, and where Root of Nightmares kind of fell short for me. First up, I think perspective here is important. So let's just look back at Destiny 1. Destiny 1, Vault of Glass had 22 teams clear it. Crota's Inn was even less than that at 12 teams. I actually remember failing the first day for Crota's Inn. Granted, back then, everyone was just a lot worse at the game. We didn't understand the meta fully, raid mechanics, and everyone was working with an LFG team. You only had a few at the top that actually had dedicated teams. Then we had King's Fall at 179 clears, and then Wrath of the Machine at 2,911 clears. Now notice, Wrath of the Machine had substantially more raid completions than the other raids. Two reasons for this. Number one, the overall player base got a lot better. And number two, this was the end of Destiny 1's life cycle. Bungie wanted to give everyone in the player base a good send-off. And nothing feels better than after all these years of going against some of the hardest content Bungie had to offer, suddenly you're able to get the day one clear. Now let's fast forward to Destiny 2. Leviathan, 761 clears. By the way, I'm gonna jump around a little bit here to some of the bigger numbers. Eater of Worlds, 4,545 clears. Prestige was even higher. Spire of Stars, though, we actually went backwards and substantially. Only 19 teams cleared Spire of Stars. Last Wish got even harder. Only 2 teams cleared Last Wish. Dude, no lie, I love it when it's that level of difficult. And then Scourge of the Past, 954 teams cleared. It was actually one of the fastest clears in the game for the day one completion. And I remember there was a lot of upset players with how easy Scourge of the Past was. So Bungie actually amped up the difficulty with Crown of Sorrow with only 104 clears. Garden of Salvation even less than that at 96 clears. But then we see a 180. Suddenly, we start seeing record levels of clears. Deepstone Crypt, over 5,000. Vault of Glass, which we can't really count Vault of Glass, considering that's an old raid and many of the mechanics transferred over, but that was at 6,700. King's Fall at 8,600. Vow of the Disciple at 6,800. Granted, Vow got an extension similar to like Root of Nightmares. But then we have Root of Nightmares here at 45,541 clears. That is staggering. That's a lot of Guardians. Now, to an elitist player, they see that number and they don't like it. They want Bungie to go the opposite way. But there were people this past weekend that barely got over the finish line, and dude, they were so hyped. It's addicting getting on Twitter and seeing folks share out their screenshots of the raid clears and literally saying things like, this was my first ever raid launch clear in all of Destiny. I'm only mentioning all this because, again, in Bungie's eyes, this was a success. They want more participation. They want more people playing the raid, and this weekend, they got just that. Now, before my hardcore players say, yo, where is the difficulty gone? This used to be a hard game. Funny enough, the game has gotten a lot harder. Matter of fact, if you load up right now into this week's Nightfall, dude, you are gonna get slapped. Where the raid has actually dropped in difficulty, especially now that we've gotten to play Root of Nightmares outside of contest mode, and yes, it is quite the joke. Where the raid has actually gone down in difficulty though, everything else in the game has gone up, substantially so. It's almost as if Bungie's saying, hey, go play the raid. Sure, you can go do Grandmaster Nightfalls and simultaneously put your dick through a blender, or you can go play this nice little raid over here, get some good loot out of it, and experience one of the pinnacle activities of Destiny 2. It's very apparent to me, guys, since the deal with Sony, that Bungie is targeting new players and more participation from all players outside of just the hardcore. But at the same time, these raids are an amazing experience. And secondly, we know we are getting close to the end of Destiny 2's life cycle. I don't know what's gonna happen after Final Shape, guys. I don't know if we're gonna get just more updates to Destiny 2. Is Bungie secretly working on a Destiny 3? I have no idea. But there's gonna come a day where we will no longer have day one raid experiences. And that does sadden me. It made me stop halfway through this raid and just appreciate just experiencing this. It also made me realize that everyone should experience this, because a day is gonna unfortunately come where we're not gonna get that major annual expansion raid, which by the way, is such an adrenaline rush. Like I looked down suddenly Friday and realized we were in the lead for all of like 15 minutes. And then we got to the planning room and everything just went to shite. But in that moment, it was beautiful. I love that over this past weekend, everyone was going for that emblem. Everyone was experiencing that adrenaline rush. Now, with that being said, truthfully, Root of Nightmares, just from my previous experience with all of these day one raids, it was easier to the point where I actually wondered if contest mode was actually on. But there was a couple of things that contributed to the game game being easier. First up, we are stronger now than ever before. Whether it was builds, strand, combination of our artifact mods, hell fellas, you can literally run around with a void heavy weapon and just lay on the trigger, and you're literally feeding yourself back heavy ammo. The first encounter was actually really cool. I love the tormentors coming out on either side, and on contest mode, it was challenging. Granted, we played it yesterday after contest mode went off, and well, it's definitely a joke. Bungie is obviously pushing us to do the master mode version of this raid, which will be on that level of contest difficulty. And the reason why they're really pushing us to that point is because we're going to get adept weapons, and later this season, we're going to be able to upgrade those adept weapons, level them up, and enhance the traits on those drops. It's a major change. It's very obvious to me that Bungie is trying to push every new player to experience this raid, and then proceed to push the more hardcore players into the master mode version by incentivizing us with some very sexy loot. Now, the second encounter was also really cool. The white mechanic alone is so awesome to watch, right? Like just watching your entire team get pushed into the middle and die. A lot of people have actually made comparisons between Root of Nightmares and Wrath of the Machine, where it was just this constant push and action-packed from start to finish. And I really felt that way in this raid. It felt very action-packed. Now, moving into the third encounter. This is where I was both blown away, but simultaneously let down. Now, reason why I was blown away is this is the planet room, the room in which we saw the witness last year. It's crazy that this is actually a raid encounter. And we're going to get into the lore in just a second because Savathun actually predicted us having the power to move planets. Now, where this room let me down is that this was supposed to be, or at least what was leaked, supposed to be the boss for this room. And instead, we just got the same old as our boss. I'm not really sure why we didn't get this guy. This guy literally looks like he was meant for this room considering he has planets all around him. It would make perfect sense to have him as the third encounter boss, but for some reason, we didn't get him. Other than that though, this was definitely the highlight of the entire raid for me. This whole room, this whole sequence was fantastic. The ad density was also very good, especially for contest mode, where you literally had to have dedicated ad clears because ads would spawn up constantly in the middle. It seemed like they had no end. I literally had to break out Double Stacy just to lock down all the ads in the middle. Now, moving into the fourth encounter, which is Nezarec himself. A lot of people are making fun of Nezarec, and rightfully so. He does look like an out-of-shape version of Rolk. And I will say, Val the Disciple set a bar, not just for raids, but also for bosses in general. The elegance that Rolk had, the poise that he had, even in the fight. It almost seems like he was holding back the entire time fighting us, and the actual boss mechanics that he would use. You had to move, you had to dodge, you had to coordinate buffs. To me, guys, that is a perfect boss encounter. What we got though was Nezarec, who was a lot more chaotic than that of Rolk, but at the same time, we could literally just cheese him and just sit on these platforms and shoot him from above. Not really sure if Bungie put these things in here intentionally. Again, Tormentors are like clones of Nezarec, and the kryptonite to Tormentors, as well as Nezarec, is platforms, obviously. I honestly think if you could not cheese Nezarec, this would be a much more difficult boss fight on contest mode. Like imagine if you had to stay on ground level with him, and he's literally pushing all up in your well, just slamming the piss out of all of you. It would really change up what you could use. But because we could easily cheese and stay elevated and have little to no risk, that's why Nezarec didn't live up to the difficulty that we saw with Rolk. And at the same time, the unfortunate part of this is I did not get the same exhilaration that I got when we killed Rolk. Like when we killed Rolk, it was 6 in the morning and I literally woke everybody up in my house. I was that excited that we just took down Rolk. Nezarec though, dude, it was just another Friday, man. And honestly, when we look at Nezarec and this entire raid, it starts to feel like this was filler content and not necessarily the main course. The main course seems to be the final shape. It seems to be the witness. Nezarec was just somebody that happened to be there that got revived when the Traveler blasted the pyramid ship, which resulted in Nezarec or pieces of Nezarec being resurrected, which does take us to the lore portion of this video. And lore is important because if there is anything to take away from this raid, there is a level of richness that I think my lore players will very much appreciate. The entire raid is really us trying to find Nezarec after he psychologically tormented the people of Neomuna and even led to a murder in the Cloud Ark. And once we arrive on the Witness's pyramid ship, and I know there were some questions like, why are we even here? Well, it's because the Witness literally just went inside the Traveler. So I think the most logical thing for us to be doing here is just for us to go into the pyramid ship and be like, yo, what did he leave behind? What kind of deodorant does he wear? Because my man's got some mad finger skills and we need to figure out a way to counter his ass. Now we realize Nezarec has been revived because of the Traveler's light beam, and throughout the raid, as we go through each encounter, he slowly learns how to wield the light. And in the final boss fight, that's what he uses against us, which is exactly why we need both that light and darkness flux protection to survive the white mechanic, which is the same pretty much throughout the entire raid. Now I do want to jump into Season of the Plunder. Many people are asking the question, rightfully so, why was Nezarec on the Witness's pyramid ship and not on the lunar pyramid? The truth is, the Witness put Nezarec back together, but he didn't have all the pieces. Nezarec asked us in the raid if we know where his remaining pieces are located, of which we do. It would be interesting if we take the Delicate Tomb exotic into the raid and if anything would actually happen, since it supposedly contains a piece of Nezarec inside of the gun. Again, Val the Disciple had a similar interaction with the Parasite grenade launcher, so it's not too far-fetched to think that this raid has a similar secret. Now let's look at Nezarec's helmet, called Nezarec Sin, and its lore. He is that which is in, that which covets sin, the final god of pain, the purest light and the darkest hour. He shall rise again. When the guiding shine fades and all seems lost, he will call to you. Fear not, all he offers is not as dark as it may seem, for Nezarec is no demon, but a fiend, arch and vile in ways unknown. He is path and a way, one of many, and his sin, so wicked, so divine, is that he will never cower when dusk does fall, but stand vigilant as old stars die, and new light blinks its first upon this fetid eternity. Now we have had this exotic since 2017, and it perfectly describes what took place in the Root of Nightmares. The name Nezarec Sin is also the inspiration for the naming structure of all the raid weapons. Nezarec was resurrected by the light beam from the Traveler, and all hope was supposed to seem lost in the campaign because we technically lost, even though we didn't feel like we lost. Nezarec called to us in the Hypernet Current Strike and also talks to us throughout the entire raid. Now we still don't know exactly what his sin is, but the end of the lore tab basically implies that he will exist eternally. And in the raid, Nezarec talks to us right after he dies and says, "My memory will never extinguish. In your calmest moments, your deepest slumber, you will remember me, guardians." Nezarec's influence goes beyond his death. In the raid armor lore, 3 stories are actually told of 3 victims of Nezarec and the torment he inflicted on them. All of their lives forever changed because of their encounters with the god of pain. And if Nezarec is synonymous with fear, pain, and suffering, then his memory will exist as long as the capacity of those negative emotions exists. But Cross, what the hell is the veil? Actually, I want us to get into this. Savathun, the veil, as well as Nezarec. We got a few answered questions, or at least some confirmations about what happened to Nezarec during the collapse. The conditional finality raid exotic shotgun lore is told from the perspective of Nezarec when he was actually attacked by Savathun. "I watched the witch sought her out like she'd won. My ship rumbled as she claimed her primordial prize from it." We also have some dialogue from Nezarec during the raid. "After that witch killed me and cursed my remains, I assumed that's when she whisked away the veil to Neptune, the coveted key to the witness's plans, and the Sabbath secret of its first victims. As much as I loathe her, I must applaud her efforts." It appears the veil may have been under the control of Nezarec. Maybe he was a keeper of sorts. But after Savathun killed him, she stole the veil and took it to Neptune. We actually have an entire lore video in the works for what we believe the veil actually is. Our theory is gonna blow your socks off, by the way, guys. But with that being said, Savathun, oh, she's bad. Not only did she take down Nezarec, she also took down Rolk, trapping him in her throne world. This really shows you how strong she actually is. But at the same time, throughout this raid, and you start hearing the perspective here from Nezarec, I start to question, is Savathun our greatest ally? So was this raid a success? Well, lore-wise, absolutely. Even if this is somewhat filler content, this enriches what's to come. I wish Nezarec was as amazing as Rolk. I wish the third encounter had a different boss. But if there was to be a raid that was going to be more inclusive and involve every single player, new or old, I'm glad it's this one, because I am okay with Nezarec and this raid being as easy as it was. But hear me out. Final shape, that raid, which most likely is going to involve the witness being the boss, that raid is going to have to pop. The witness is the greatest enemy we have ever come across. If the raid in final shape is this level of difficulty, and then not only that, lacks creativity, and the witness turns out to be an absolute pushover, that is going to be an absolute letdown for me. So guys, that is my thoughts on the raid. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.